So
It's
you're
April 14th.
April 14th, yeah. But it's the day before taxes are due.
That's the prompt, right?
Yeah,
That's
the
not
prompt.
Sue's.
The motive.
Oh, no, yeah, yeah. That's it.
Sue's topic is,
Sue's topic will be motive for the theft.
Oh, motive for the
That's
theft.
what next month's.
no, I'm asking what Sue is gonna be speaking
Oh,
on.
I would have to look in my book.
I think it's published.
The publishing,
I think it's
the publishing industry and what it means.
It is publishing, you're correct. She usually does poetry for us, but this time she's
It's
doing.
doing publishing, yes. Great. Now, we come to the guest portion of the meeting. I'm going to have to put on my glasses. This is like a coffin or something. It is, yeah. And also, look at this is a story too. The whole thing is falling apart. One of the interesting things I read about the introduction to T.K. Thorne, Teresa, is that she was a police officer, and you look so nice. I can't imagine getting pulled over by you, and you'd come up and probably slap me or something. But no, you look great. So you were a police officer, but and you turned into a writer. So both career and a master's degree in social work from the University of Alabama provide fodder for your writing, which has garnered several awards. I'm very happy to say, including Book of the Year, historical fiction, for her debut novel, Noah's Wife, the New York Post's books you should be reading. The first feature, what is that? Oh, you know, I'm going to have to get new glasses. I keep saying that every time I do this, and I go, oh,
I
okay.
still seeing double.
No, I'm not seeing double. If I see double, I'd probably see better, because I could close one eye and it'd be better. But anyway, it's the books you should be reading list that's featured her first nonfiction book, Last Chance for Justice. I really think we're honored to have her today, and she's going to be speaking on a subject that really is important to us as writers, which is the art of the page turner. So I would like for us to give a big Penster's welcome to T.K. Thorne, who's going to speak to us tonight. The groaning.
All right, I'm still on a tether here. But I really have a lot of room. I just prefer to be closer to y'all and not endure that strange contraption. Well, hi, I'm so pleased to be back with you. I'm going to talk today, the title is 7 Steps to Make Your Book a Page Turner. I really had to work to make it 7, okay, I like 7, it's a good number. But I've given this talk before and realized I had about 10 in the middle of the talk. So the number does not matter. It's the points that matter. And I also, just to save you some scribbling if you like, or you can write as much as you like or none at all, but I've tried to give you little handouts and I may not have had enough, and I apologize for that. Anyway, why does this topic span fiction and nonfiction? Because when you're writing fiction, it's pretty obvious. You get to make up and make these things happen, right? You create them. But when you write nonfiction, how many people write nonfiction in here? Okay, several people. When you write nonfiction, you have to look for them. You look for them in the story, and that helps you pick the right story and pick the right places to put things. Or if you get stuck and you say, this is really boring, you can look at these and say, what can I do to spice this up? But my first advice to you is, don't worry about any of this. Okay, just write. Just write your story. You can use structure to help you write, and whatever your process is, that's fine. But these things are most helpful, I think, in going back over things and looking at them. And when you're reading material, this is where you learn. When you read and something affects you, you think, wow, that was good. Okay, and you should go back and look at it and try to analyze what made this work right. But when you're writing, let it be an instinctual process until you get to a point where you need it. Does that make sense? You can't, I can't. If anybody in here is able to do this, my hat's off to you, but I cannot start a book or start a work saying, you know, let me outline every single thing and know exactly what I'm going. And some people do this, I guess, and know each chapter and where the arc is in each chapter. It doesn't work like that for me. But if I write it down, I write what's in my head, and then I say, something's not right here, what do I need to do? Then this can really help you, I believe. So, first of all, can everybody hear me? Am I speaking properly for this mic? The number one thing, and it doesn't even have a number, in writing is to create emotion. That's sort of what we're all aiming at. We want to engage our reader, right? Because that's what a page turner is something that makes you want to turn the page. And the main ingredient for that is the stirring of our emotion. That is why, y'all, when you see a commercial for a new car, there's a beautiful woman somewhere. I've always wondered, why, what is, I don't get it. But I took a course in advertising and learned that it hits something in your midbrain, okay, and stirs something up in that area that emotion is, even if you're not aware of it. So that's pretty cool. By the way, I think I should stop and say, how much time do I have?
It's 11:15,
11:15
or 11:30.
or 11:30.
We'll get the,
Why don't I kind of chit chat for 11 to 11:15 and then let's just talk, okay? And question and answer, will that work?
Sure.
And I'm going to try to get through 7 steps. But, okay, so first of all, what I want to do is kind of do a documentary for you here to illustrate a point. I'm going to do a documentary of a cheetah chasing a gazelle. Please, I'm now a TV set, I'm now a video. See the cheetah chasing the gazelle. The gazelle is running for her life. Gazelle. Where? Yeah. Africa. Setting woman, right? Where am I? You're in Africa. You're looking at a gazelle. She is running for her life. The cheetah is behind her, which is why she's running for her life. Her nostrils are flaring, trying to get enough oxygen. She's trying to zigzag because she knows the cheetah's faster, right? Cheetah's the fastest creature on earth. Her sides are heaving. The whites of her eyes are showing, right? Okay. Our camera goes to the cheetah. The cheetah is running as fast as she can. Her sides are heaving. Her muscles are bunching. She's following the twists and turns of the gazelle. Intent. Everything, every fiber in her body is intent on that gazelle. Okay. Where are your sympathies? Gazelle. Gazelle, right? That's kind of human nature, gazelle. Okay. That's just it's just the camera. But I want to take that camera somewhere. I want to take it back to the cheetah's den. And I want you to see 4 or 5 kitten cubs. The skin is stretched tight over their ribs. They're starving. They have not eaten. They're crying. They're going to die very soon. And I want to give you some facts. Fact 1, when a cheetah gives birth, Mr. Cheetah disappears. She has to raise those kittens all by herself. Fact 2, cheetah is the fastest creature on earth, but only for one spurt. She only has the energy for one spurt. And she hasn't caught anything in a week. This is it. If she doesn't bring down this gazelle, her kittens are she's gonna starve and her kittens are gonna starve. Now where are our sympathies? Cheetah, or at least a little mix, right? So my point is that what is my point? I have notes here. I manipulated you, didn't I? Okay. And here in America, particularly, manipulate is a bad word. We don't like that word here. But face it, guys, that's what we do. We manipulate. We tell story. Story is the root of everything. There's something I read not too long ago that really, I've been thinking about it I've been thinking about this for a year at least, maybe 2 years. And that is that I read that story is hardwired into our brain. That's an interesting concept. What does that mean? That's why it's taken me 2 years to think about. Story is hardwired into our brain. It means that the human brain takes every sensory input that it gets. What we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we perceive is our place in space, and it organizes it into a story with a timeline. And we are the protagonist in our story that we tell. Why is this important? Because it is the way the human brain organizes and learns and perceives. That's hugely important because guess what? We are storytellers. And this is how human beings have learned since the time that we sat around a fire and communicated with each other with grunts and motions. We were telling a story. This is how I prepared for the hunt. This is the weapons that we did. This is how we got together and got everybody pumped up to go hunt the gazelle. Poor gazelle. But we were too smart to go hunt the cheetah. Okay, so we know we manipulate and tell and how we learn. So now let's go back. What is a page turner? Obviously it's a story, but it's a story. There are lots of stories. I mean, we have a story about going to the bathroom in our heads. But a page turner story is one that engages the reader. And I don't care how long it is. You can do a story in a tweet. Okay? The story engages the reader. How do you engage the reader? Well, the number one thing is emotion. Okay? It doesn't have a number. But it's the underlying thing that we're going for because that we know is what grabs people. But how do you get emotion? You can't just start writing, Jane was sobbing. Okay, you can write that and you can start that way, but you're not going to have, your reader's not going to cry with you, right? So the first thing that you need is a setup. Why is Jane crying? Who is Jane? Why should I care about Jane? So setup is extremely important. I would tell you a joke without the punchline, but I'd probably forget it. I'm very bad at that. But if I did, it would mean nothing to you without the setup. Right? So Jane crying means nothing to us without the setup. The cheetah means nothing to us without the setup of seeing the kittens. Okay? And this can happen in a paragraph. Right? You're looking at a paragraph and you say, why isn't this working? Oh, I think I forgot the setup. Or I didn't manipulate the setup so that there's a punchline, so that it's meaningful. And that's important. All right. And now I'm going to go back to probably one of the most important things I can tell you, and this is not the first time I've said it, and maybe not the first time you've heard it, but it's worth saying again. One of our main problems as writers is that we buy into this, what is good and what is not good. Why? Okay. There is no good and not good in writing. Okay. There is, who's down on blue? Okay. Which is a better blue? Blue jeans or Verna's shirt? Which is better? Which is good? Which is not good? Makes no sense, does it really? And we put these labels on ourselves, and when we do, we get all tied up in, oh my God, I'm no good. I'm not good. That means I'm bad, right? I'm a bad writer. I should stop. No good. Erase all of that from your mind. That's the wrong question to be asking about what you write. Instead, there are 3 questions you should ask. And the number 1 question is, does it work? I apologize, this is not on, you can go on the back if it's not on the front of you. Does it work? That's the most important question you can ask of your writing. Not if it's good, not if it's bad. Does it work? Okay? The next thing is, for whom? Make sure I don't say for who. For whom does it work? Who's the number 1 person it should work for?
The reader.
The reader? Okay, reader's fine answer to that. Yourself is a fine answer for that. Okay. Nobody is not so good of an answer. If it works for nobody, you might want to go figure out what's wrong with it. Why is it not working? And that's when all these things can come in and be a help, I think. All right, the third question is also extremely important. What do you do when it doesn't work for you or your reader or your husband or your wife? When you ask the question,
What makes it work?
what makes it work? Excellent, thank you. Or how can I make it work better? Which is the same answer. Okay? So, if you change that paradigm in your head, I promise you it will change how you look at writing and yourself. And you can actually probably use this for relationships and all kinds of things, can you? It's a bad relationship? Maybe, maybe not. That isn't really the right question. Maybe the question is it working? And if it's not, which party is it not working for? And how can I make it better? I think those are useful questions to ask in just about anything in life. Y'all can pay 5 cents on the way up. So my little paradigm too, and this also applies to all of the rules of writing that we have. You know, people throw a lot of rules at you. You must never say or do this or that or the other. I say there are no rules, only tools. And Sue Walker will probably tell you that because she stole it from me. No rules, only tools. Look at it as a tool. Can you break a rule? Yeah. But know why you're breaking it. Know that this is, I'm doing this so it will work better. Okay, now we're going to move on and quickly go through. So number 1 was the setup. Number 2 is develop the characters. You've got to make the characters real for the reader. Otherwise, it's always crying. I don't want to get involved with that. Okay? Over in the room. And so how do you do that? How do you make a connection with humanity in the character? Be it a real person that you're writing about, a historical person, or somebody you made up in your head. They all need, somehow the reader must feel a connection. How do you do that? These are just some things that you can do. You want to show maybe their frailties or weaknesses or their strengths, and most importantly, how they change. This is extremely interesting to us as human beings. Why? It's tied into that story thing. The story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? That arc of change, of development, of getting better, of learning how to hunt better, is built into us. It's part of who we are. So we want to see that, we crave to see that. Here's some other quick things. I think I may have written some of these down. So employ personal side stories. In my nonfiction book, Last Chance for Justice, it's about the 16th Street Church bombing case. And you can imagine it's a pretty serious book. It's about that investigation. And there are three investigators, one of whom was a Birmingham police officer that I knew. And he was telling me about the culmination of this 5-year investigation on the two Klansmen who were the last suspects in this bombing, the last defendants. And they were taken to trial, and how tense it was, and how they were scrambling behind the scenes to provide everything that the prosecutors needed for the courtroom drama. And it was so demanding on them that they didn't go home for days. They just stayed in the hotel. Well, Ben snuck away one night to go home. And he pulled into the driveway, and he saw a strange car in the driveway in the middle of the night. And he was like, oh shit, excuse me. He's like, oh my gosh. I've been away so long, I've been working on this case so hard, and I've been away so long, my wife has found somebody. She's seen somebody. And his heart just sank. And he went in the house, and she was still up, sitting in the living room, watching TV or something, and he went and sat down and he said, we need to talk. And she said, okay. And he said, just tell me, whose car is it in the driveway? And she said, Ben, you know that new car I've been wanting? That you just wouldn't go, you just didn't have time to go look for with me? Well, I just went and bought it. So I included that story. Why? Because for many reasons it works. What does it do? It makes you see Ben, this police detective, is a real person and he feels the same way we do. When he was walking in the airport in Texas to go for the first time, going back in the timeline, first time to interview this suspect. They'd worked for a year and a half on all the background, and now they were going to interview the suspect, which was a very stressful and intense moment in time. And he was traveling. He's from Birmingham, Alabama, and he was a police officer and never been apart from his gun. But he was working with the FBI, and their rule was you don't carry guns with you or something. I don't know. Whatever it was, he snuck the gun into his luggage. So he's walking down the airport, and any minute he's expecting a hand on his shoulder to say, Ben Heron, can we talk to you? We need to talk to you in private. Why do you say that? Why do you say the little personal story? Because it makes them human, right? So you show their humanity in that way. If you say Jane was a human being and she was crying, doesn't work too well, does it? Not that it's a child, and tell her story. It becomes real to us. It becomes human to us. Raise questions. Keep a question in your reader's mind as long as you can. And when you resolve that question, raise another. End of the chapter is a very good time to do that, and will result in the page being turned. Use relationships, particularly family, if you can get it in there. Family is extremely powerful. If Jane was just sitting in the corner crying, the first thing I would do is have it be because of family. Maybe her father abused her. Then we start getting interested, don't we? Okay. I have down here also show the emotional reactions of people. You can do that, but you need to do it with setup and all these other things in order to make it work. Okay, conflict. I know people talk to you about conflict. Conflict is really a problem. It can be external, it can be internal. What does your character care about? What do they want? And what is the problem du jour that is keeping them from getting that goal? That is conflict, okay? If you have a paragraph that doesn't, or a chapter that just doesn't go anywhere, or a piece of history that doesn't go anywhere, look for that conflict. Look for what was the problem? And again, that's part of our hardwire story, how we're wired. Has anybody ever talked to you about another thing? There's conflict and then there's tension. There's a difference between tension or suspense and conflict. Anybody ever talked to you about Alfred Hitchcock's definition of suspense? Okay. Hitchcock said, when they're making a movie and you've got a family at dinner and you've got a bomb under the table, okay? And as far as the director, and we're talking about movies because that's what Hitchcock, you're looking at the family eating the dinner and then suddenly the bomb goes off and you didn't know it was under the table. But that's surprise. That is not suspense. But if you have the same setup, families at the table at dinner talking, and the camera goes into the table, that is suspense. I found a really unique way to do that, and again, I didn't set out going, how can I build suspense in my head, but it instinctively kind of came out that way. My new book, which is not out, it's going to be a trilogy. It's about a Birmingham police detective who discovers she's a witch. And I had a lot of fun with it. And the first chapter, as I was just writing and playing around, she's chasing a burglar down an alley. And her partner has just let her out, told her to chase the burglar, and then he's driving around the corner, right? And he's going to stop him at the other end. And she gets out and is going down this alley, and all of a sudden, this vision hits her. She'd never had one before. And she sees kind of a shadow world, and she sees a shadow suspect peel off of the real guy. Just as her shadow partner pulls around the corner. And the shadow suspect shoots her partner, kills her. All this is in a vision that's taking place like that, right in front of her. And when she gets jerked back into reality, she realizes her vision is coming true. But she can't see the gun. She has to decide right there, what am I going to do? Conflict. Okay, we have a problem? Yeah. What else are we doing? I realized after I wrote it that we've got suspense. When you saw the shadow world, what happened in the shadow world, it's like looking at that bomb under the table. Okay? So she's got to decide whether she shoots this guy in the back or not, which doing something like that has a lot of ramifications, trust me. All right, moving on. What time are we? I've got 10 minutes to go through this part. Yeah, okay. Thank you, ma'am. I have permission to take longer. Tension and suspense. Choice is number 5. No matter what a character says or how they conduct themselves, the only way they truly reveal themselves is by the choices that they make under pressure. I'm pausing because that is an extremely important concept. And once again, you can leave 5 more cents on the table. It's true in life too, isn't it? How do you tell who a person really is? How do you tell who you are? You really don't know who you are until you are in a situation where you have to make a choice. And you make it. Well, the same thing is true for our characters. And again, if you're writing something that really happened in history, look for that. And then make sure you set that up so that that's a hard choice, so that's a problem. A character that jumps into battle with no fear whatsoever he's not really making a lot of choice, is he? He's just kind of acting. But somebody that is scared to death, wet in their pants, and still acts, that is a choice. Number 6, create and maintain a sense of movement. Again, we talked about movement, learning, change is all part of that hardwiring that we have. This is number 6 on your little outline, I hope. In nonfiction, when you're looking for the story to tell, look for one that has an arc. My story about the bombing case has a natural arc to it because you start the investigation, you do the investigation, and they went to trial. Okay? But there's that story arc, and then there's what we call the denouement, a French word, you call it what happens in an epilogue. You know, how are you going to really end the thing? And while I was interviewing these investigators, one of them told me a scene, and I immediately, this is years before I wrote the book, I said, that's my ending. I was listening for it, and I heard it. I said, that's the end. So, and if you're writing a story, one of the most important things you can do is know your ending. And I know people sometimes resist this because they just want it to go where it goes, and that's fine. But if you know, think about it, if you know your ending, and I'm not talking about necessarily knowing exactly where you're going with this, but just having a concept of your ending or your ending scene, it will allow you to manipulate your reader. Right? Think about a mystery, for example. A good mystery writer knows the answer when they're writing. And this is helpful as a writer because then they can put clues in that mislead you. And if you don't know the ending, when you do figure it out, you can go back, because remember this is your creation, and put those little things in. Okay. This narrative description, that's great. Don't let it clog your movement down. Surprising the reader is good. And unfortunately, once you get this and understand it, it will kind of ruin how you read things because you'll see where the author's doing it. If you have a character that's going to a meeting, for example, that's important to their career, and they're all excited about it, and they're like, yes, this is going to change my life. This is what I've been waiting for. You know, I know this is going to go well, basically. You can pretty much guarantee if it's a good writer, or excuse me, not a good writer, it's an effective writer, that it will all go to hell when she gets to that meeting, right? On the other hand, if she's scared to death, if she's sweating, if she's like, I don't, you know, everything depends on this, I know it's just, I'm going to screw it up like I have always screwed it up when I get nervous. That's going to be a successful meeting. Right? I can tell the future. Why? Because I know that a clever writer will set you up for one emotion and then spin another one on you. Is anybody else? Yeah. Okay, somebody else. It's a drama set around all the fairy tale stories that we all know so well, with lots of twists. I love the twists that they do.
Drama about what? Okay.
It's just on Netflix. It's it was a TV show that went on for years, and it's now on Netflix. You can watch it. But I watch it, and it's like a little training class in telling a narrative. They do all these things in this 1-hour episode that you need to do, and at the end, they will resolve the problem, right? And I'm like, okay, what's coming next? And then in the next, I'm sure it's like a minute and a half or 2 minutes, you get the big wow, oh whoops, but situation, you know. The good witch the bad witch is turned into a good witch, but whoops, all her happiness is about to crumble because, boom. Oh, it's called Once Upon a Time. I don't know that it's the greatest drama in the world, but it's quite instructive and it's fun to see your fairy tales kind of twisted. Which is kind of what I did in my novels, Noah's Wife and Angels at the Gate. They're both stories about women in the Bible who have no name in one line, and I kind of twist. I take the kind of the general structure that we know with my own little twist in it, which is really fun in a historical setting. I'll plug that. So number 7 is make it interesting. Duh. People that write nonfiction sometimes have a hard time, how do I make this interesting? And one of the things you can do is point out irony. I love irony in history.
Tell us what you call iron.
What I call iron, oh gosh, you're making me have to think on my feet. What I call irony is, okay, all right, I'm working on another nonfiction, and y'all all know who Bull Connor is, right, in Birmingham, the police commissioner who, okay, before he became the police commissioner of Birmingham, he was a legislator. And one of the things that he set up was the merit system in Birmingham, in the county, so that you can't just, a city official can't just fire a police officer or fireman or whoever's in the employees in that merit system. You have to go, you have to have cause, you have to have due process, and there's an appeal to this merit board. Well, when Bull Connor became the commissioner, he had to sit out a term. He was a commissioner in the 1930s, but he was caught in a hotel in a compromising situation with his secretary during his tenure in the 50s, I believe. And he had to sit out a term politically and just pump gas at his gasoline station. But when he got back in, there'd been another commissioner who'd appointed the police chief. So there was, at that time, there was a commission, 3 commissioners, and then there was a police chief who worked at the pleasure of the commissioner, supposedly. But at that time, the chief position was under the merit system. And Connor hated the police chief. He couldn't, and he tried to fire him. He couldn't fire him because of the merit system that he had enacted.
So it's sort of like karma.
Like what?
Karma.
Karma, exactly. When karma hit hard. So that's irony. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so, and it's interesting because it's so ironic, right? Okay, thank you for asking that. Great question. So another way is to bring up a question. Why did a character act that way? Explore that. You may not know the answer, but even bringing up the question will be interesting. Maybe nobody's ever asked that. Why did Hitler want to kill the Jews?
So
That question will haunt us historically forever. Yes, ma'am.
So when you try to answer that question, is it just more, that's where the fiction comes in?
You might not be able to answer it. You might just be observing. No one knows why. But what that does is it brings into your reader's mind, oh, yeah, why did he do that? Or you might say, all we know about it is this. So you can stay in a nonfiction, and you can say this is, the speculation is, right? Okay, and then there's another, and other people say something different. We may never know, but what we do know is, okay. I think y'all, no wonder y'all were looking at me strangely. I may have repeated that, but don't worry about it. Okay. As I said, don't worry about doing all this. To quote Yoda and Nike, just do it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Let's start up here.
Going back to the bringing up the question about why did this person do this,
And I know why she was like that, and why she did what she did, but I don't spell it out in the book. Now, is that good? No, nothing's good or bad, but does it work?
Doesn't work.
Does it work?
I don't know.
Well, that's where you have beta readers come in, and let them read it and see, you know. For something like that, I would pick one person that you feel like is going to honestly tell you about their engagement with the story and tell you what questions popped in their mind or whether that satisfied them or not. And that's a good question. Your reader at the end needs to have some feeling of satisfaction about it. If they don't, that might be a clue that might be why. Okay? But I wouldn't give it to a bunch of readers. Give it to that one person because you want to save these other people for when you fix that. The question was that she had, I'm sorry, I should have said that first, right? The question was that in her work, she knew why the character did something, but she didn't spell it out. You know, and the question is, does that work? And my answer is, well, does it? I don't know. It might, surely. You don't necessarily have to spell everything out, but you could tantalize us with little glimpses or not. Whatever works is the answer to that question. And I'm sorry, yes ma'am, could you speak up?
Yes, ma'am. Would you talk a little bit about character development and the reader's reaction when you start, you characterize a character, you cause the reader to fall in love with them, the character falls from grace, the reader doesn't like him anymore. How do you, and you need to redeem the character again.
Yes.
Can you talk about that a little?
I think one of the most effective stories I ever read with that, I'm sorry, the question. Did everybody hear the question? I can't tell if y'all saying yes or no.
Yes.
No. Okay. Thank you for head shaking. The question was, she has a character that has fallen from grace and done some bad things. And now she needs, and the question was, how do you do that, or what?
Just what do you know, what could you recommend for, having the reader
Stay with you while she's being
and come
being
back
simple.
around to keep getting, because this is nonfiction. So how do you get the reader to hang in there when they realize your beloved character isn't so beloved anymore, and you need to keep going?
Okay, and this is nonfiction.
Yes.
So I would look for those things. I would try to put yourself in the situation. Okay? If I did that, what might have been my motivation? How do you humanize her while she's being awful, is the question.
Okay.
So there's something tearing at her. There's something, if she's doing that, especially if she was a good character in the first place and then she made these wrong choices, is what she did. Why? Why did she make those choices? That's where your story is, I believe. So if you can explore that. And if you have to, here's something, when I get stuck on a character like that, sometimes if you'll just forget about the novel or whatever, and just take a clean sheet of paper or a clean screen or whatever and write a letter from her, a journal, an entry, okay? And just explore what might have been wrong with her. And if it's nonfiction, you might not be able to say this and that and the other, but you can raise the question, as we talked about. What was it about her past or her history or whatever?
I was going to say, you don't necessarily have to like a character, but you have to understand the character. If you understand where he's coming from, maybe you can redeem the character as the novel progresses.
Yes. Stephen Donaldson wrote a wonderful book like that. Where's my brother? I caught you. What was Stephen Donaldson's One Tree? He wrote the One Tree Chronicle. He also wrote a side book about a really bad character. Do you remember what that was? He kidnapped this woman, and it was just really awful.
I remember that was one of the ones that didn't work for me.
It didn't work for him. Okay, it worked for me, and I was amazed that he did it. So I wish I could tell you the name of it, but if you look up Stephen, he spells it with a PH, Donaldson.
And I think
And it's
that's-
one of his non-fantasy books, but it's a science fiction book.
And I think that's without a second D. I think it's maybe Donaldson, not
Okay.
Donald.
Okay, Donaldson. Yes, ma'am.
One tree.
Well, he wrote he wrote 6 books. And the first book is called The One Tree. It's the Thomas Covenant Chronicles, but it's not that book. It's another book he wrote. But that'll help you identify that you're talking about the right person. It may not be your cup of tea. You might say, this is terrible. But he took a really, really bad character, and somehow we were interested in that bad character the whole time. And somehow the character redeemed himself.
It's Donaldson with the second D, and the book you're talking about, maybe Mordant's Need? Is that the one?
I don't know.
Mordant's Need?
I don't know. It's a thin little book. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. When you were talking, a couple of times you said a good writer, and then you said, well, a clever writer or an effective writer.
Yes.
Is there a difference between those three? or-
Yeah, I'm going back to the thing I said, we don't judge work by being good or bad. It's does it work? And so when I slip up and say a good writer, this is just the same thing. I'm trying not to use that word. Because, what does it mean? And it has so much emotional baggage with it. It's, you want to be an effective writer, a writer who gets people to turn the pages. Yes, ma'am.
Well, turning the pages, I noticed you said that a question is left hanging in the air, so they'll want to continue turning the pages. What if in your head you have a series and this child lost her parents? So at the end of the book, you never bring the parents back in because you want to bring it in the second book. Would you say that's a good thing, or would you say, no, you need to finish up that particular
An
book?
excellent question. The question is, you're writing a series, and you've left a big question unresolved in the book. And is that a good thing, or is that not? Oh, excuse me, good. Does that work, or doesn't it? Well, some of it's going to depend on how you do it. But I have had that very same issue because this my Police Witch is a trilogy. Okay, so, and it's it's a kind of trilogy that arcs over 3 books. So the trick is, yes, you can resolve, you need to find the sweet spot of resolving something important, but not your main overall arching plot that you want to go on. So I'm just pulling out of the sky. This child may have some other problem that they're dealing with, a bad guy or something, and you might can resolve that, but still have that other issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you want both of those things. You want the reader to feel satisfied, but wanting to turn the page. And it's really the same issue in every section of your book and every chapter of your book. It's the same thing. You can resolve stuff as long as you pull something else.
Thank you.
Just to comment on that, sorry. I read a lot of Amazon reviews, and a lot of one-star reviews are saying it was a cliffhanger, I didn't know this was gonna be a trilogy, only wanted to read the first book, and the kind of reviews that get lots of votes for, yes, this was helpful, were, thank you for letting me know it was a cliffhanger, I don't wanna start something that I can't finish. So, Amazon reviewers do not like cliffhangers.
Yeah, I would not do what Tolkien did in the Lord of the Rings. Those of you who might remember that wonderful trilogy, at the end of book 2, I believe, he has Frodo hung in a web, and the giant spider is coming for him. Now, I was in college when I read that, and I stayed up to at least 3 o'clock in the morning reading that book to see what the hell Frodo was gonna do, and he ended the book before he rescued Frodo, and I literally threw the book across the room. That is a cliffhanger, and you should not do that, okay? But that doesn't mean that you have to resolve everything. And the thing that people like about more than one book, a series or whatever, is usually the character. They're invested in the characters and the people, and that is also, they do want to know the story, but they want to know the story because they care about the character. That's the key. You have to care about, if you care about the character, then you will stay. If it's just the cliffhanger getting resolved, you won't. I'm sorry, Julie, you've been waiting forever.
I was interested in your, well, all of it, of course, but the point about choice. And I like to tell a story much of the time in a poem. And I find myself always on a word. This is a word I want to use. I'll bet you everybody else thinks I need to use that other word. But I'm going to use this word. And it may be wrong from other people.
No wrong.
Yeah, I know.
Not work. Does it work or does it work? That's
It
the
works for
question.
me.
Did you hear what she said? It works for me. You're important. If it works for you, fine.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that, I have to make this choice so many times. And I make the choice because this is what I want.
We make choices all the time, and that shapes who we are. Noreen?
Oh, I was just gonna say, you read the book and you feel like you've been cheated if it's too big of a little cliffhanger, yeah. Because people say it was such a good book, I didn't want it to end, and that's what you want. But if it's a cliffhanger where you're aggravated and think, I wasted my time reading this book, the hell with it. We're kind of like you throwing the book against the wall.
I did read book 3, though.
Yeah. That's the other side.
So he was so good.
Okay, thank you so much.
Let's
Peter.
get up.
May I say one more thing? We have my sister and daughter are back there with my books, and if you'd like one, fine. If you don't, but you're interested in, let's do the Blue Switch or